Welcome to the Kickstarter and Application Security Program. My name is Timothy D. Block. Been given a good introduction by Adam, so I will skip right to it if my clicker was on. All right, so, oops. Yeah. All right, so we need an AppSec program. Those are the words that were uttered to me by management when I had to start figuring out how to do it. The thing about an AppSec program is that I don't know German or I don't know programming. I don't have a strong programming background. And if you've seen the Imitation Game, which is just where the screenshot's from, Alan Turing goes in for an interview to work on the Enigma project, and the guy interviewing him says, well, I've turned down the top liaison in the country that knew German. And he's like, well, I don't know German. It's not about German. And so it's not necessarily about code. If you have a good programming background, that's great. But you don't have to have a strong programming background to at least get something practical up and started. So that's why I want to do this talk, is to give people who are tasked with starting an AppSec program that may not have a programming background, and hopefully people that do have a programming background can get something from this as well. What I did have a strength in was building out other programs. So I did incident response, I did patch management, I did some other stuff. So helping build those programs out really, and that's why management came to me, because I had stood up those programs and I had proven to be reliable and I could figure it out on my own. So my first step was to research. And I think we all know what our favorite research tool is. Google. No. Maybe for you. And I literally put in how to build an AppSec program because I was that much of a noob and didn't know how to even get started. But as you can see there, I did find the Open Web Application Security Project, which is a nonprofit, free, open source community that provides tools, provides frameworks, it provides a knowledge base for cross-site script and SQL injection, anything else that you have to deal with in building an application security program. So this is a very valuable tool or resource. And then from there, I quickly found a tool that was a dynamic analyzer. So dynamic analyzers will poke at a in production, live, stood up application and allow you to pretty much proxy all your traffic and all your requests through there. You can pretty much go through and click everything, and then you can run a spider on the site. It has the ability to check AJAX content. It's got a brute force force directory buster, so it looks for hidden directories. And then once you pretty much map the program, what you do is, I forgot to go to the next slide. You get to do, I didn't, sorry. I'm the 3 S's today. I'm sick, slow, and stupid, so you'll have to excuse me. But you go through the application, you run an active scan or some kind of scan that automatically goes through through the OAuth 10. So I found the Z attack proxy, which is ZAP. This program was written by Simon Bennett, who, oh, by the way, is a programmer. He wrote it because he was more security conscious and wanted to have a tool for him and his developer buddies to do, application security type stuff, check the code. And he just found that security pros started using it, and it's a really great tool. With ZAP, what I did was stood up a security assessment process where we checked all new applications going out the door. And you want to start at all new applications, because if you try to go and get all the legacy stuff and old stuff, it will take you forever to get caught up. You kind of want to try to touch those things as you can or as you find time, but starting from a point forward when you're building the AppSec program, all new application stuff has to go through ZAP. And management and leadership support is very important here. I had the benefit of being in an organization that was taken really seriously, probably because of the website defacement, but still, they took it very seriously, and when the developers were ready to release, they said, have you run it through security? So they knew they had to go through us. We established a 5-day minimum test timeline for them. We had 2 days of testing and then 3 days of remediation, or longer. It depends on what they needed to fix. So that worked really well. An alternative to ZAP is the Burp Suite, which is more of a commercial offering. It has a free community edition that you can use. You can use. It's just a little throttled as far as some of the automated scans and automated things you want to do with it. But the Burp Suite Professional Premium Edition only costs $300. So it's very, very affordable. And that's $300 a year. The subscription is $300 a year. So it's very, very affordable, especially when you consider other applications and devices within your environment that cost way, way more. This is the tool of choice by AppSec pros everywhere. About, I'd say 90 to 95% will recommend this. The difference between this one and Zap is that Zap is a little bit more buggy, and you can kind of expect that from something open source and free to use. But if you don't have a budget or you can't justify getting this, Zap will get you there. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. I've used Zap in my first AppSec program. I believe it was 16 projects and 44 scans. So it will get you what you need, which is the low-hanging fruit. And then go from there. So you want to, start getting low-hanging fruit and then kind of improve from there. The other option, the other type of analyzer is a static analyzer. This will do code-based checks. So without the code running, it will grab from Bitbucket, GitHub, any other code repository, and it will scan the code looking for issues. So we know, and you can look through OWASP, they got a lot of this stuff that you can go check within the code for issues, vulnerabilities, encryption. I'm finding like a lot of encryption and math that go wrong. The difference between static analyzers and dynamic analyzers is that static analyzers have a little bit more false positive, but they got more coverage, whereas dynamic has less false positives, more coverage. They both have false positives irregardless. So you always have to make sure you're checking the findings, because you don't want to make developers go and work on something that is a false positive. That's a good way to piss them off and not get any work done. I'm not going to talk about specific static analyzers. There are open source options, which usually touch on like one language. There's Brakeman for Rails. There's, Lint and JS Hint for JavaScript. And, there's just a ton of stuff. OWASP has a page. Wikipedia has a page about static analyzers you can use. The best bang, so if you have multiple languages, a commercial offering might be worth it. And there are quite a few commercial offerings like IBM AppScan or Checkmarks is a pretty good one. These will allow you to do multiple languages, give you a nice interface to go and check out. So you kind of want to you want to build a strategy around using both, because again, they have both their strengths and weaknesses. So static analyzer you might throw at initially, and then you can use the dynamic scanner to go confirm a lot of this stuff. Static analyzer is also really great for automation. You can kind of start small where you can check for outdated packages. That should not garner too many false positives. So you can definitely automate that. That's another benefit of static analyzers. So one thing I found pretty quickly with doing dynamic analyzers and doing security assessments is I didn't have a way to track vulnerabilities. So with new applications, they usually hand it pretty well. But when you actually find time or you have to go check something within the code base that pops up as an issue, you need something that will manage those vulnerabilities so when people give you timelines, you can track it, put notes in there, and be able to go back and do that. Because I've gotten timelines before. Yeah, we'll have it done in November, and then it's January and nothing's been fixed because I haven't been on top of that. That's kind of on me to make sure that's taken care of. So vulnerability tracking, if you can, use their internal stuff because they're already using it. And if you're going to give them security issues to work on, it just makes sense to put it in there because ultimately a security vulnerability in an application is a bug. It shouldn't be there. It's doing something it shouldn't. So you want to, excuse me, you want to make sure that you try to use what they can. If you don't, or they don't allow you to use it, there are some security offerings that you can do. My first try was Dradis. Now Dradis, I think, is Trey there?
He is not. I use it. Not good, man.
Okay, well, so I've seen Dradis work in like the Samurai WTF, and I think it's in Metasploit frameworks. So it's already set up in there. But if you try to set it up as its own like server or something, the documentation is awful. Maybe they've improved since then, but it's a great place to go put vulnerabilities in there if you can get it running. We had a tough time with it, so we moved on to ThreadFix, which has a community and a premium version. Setup was pretty good. I've heard some grumblings that the community version might not be good anymore, not as good anymore, or it's been lacking some love. But that was one that I had some really good experience with and accomplished what I needed to. More recently, I found Defect Dojo from OWASP. I actually just did a podcast recording, which hasn't released yet, but Greg Anderson, one of the creators of Defect Dojo, came on and talked about the tool. It sounds really awesome, and it sounds like it's going to cover what people need. So it does things like it'll pull in reports from multiple different appliances. So if you have like Tenable and Zap and Burp, you can pull all those in. A great feature of that is that you can then dedupe the vulnerabilities. So if there's similar vulnerabilities, you get rid of the ones that are multiple findings, which makes kind of cleanup and hygiene really good. It also has it interfaces with Jira. So if you have like a static analyzer or something, you can automate tickets to go through and just create Jira tickets for you. And they're looking to continue to improve it. It sounds really good. They have a demo on their website that you can check out and go poke around and see if it's something that might be of interest to you. One of the other benefits is that he said it's really easy to install. It's like one command to get it up and running. He uses, I think he said it was CentOS. So that's an option. If anyone uses it, let me know. I am going to potentially look at using this in my current environment, not right now, but at some point in the future. So, yeah. So one thing I also want to talk about with vulnerabilities is how you handle vulnerabilities with the dev team. Do not print out a report and just throw it to them. There are a lot of great resources that come out from like a Zap report, for instance. They give you reference, they give you the link, they tell you the attack, they give you the parameters, they give you all the information you need. So you should probably go research it. You need to be confirming every vulnerability you find to make sure it is actually an issue, because again, the one way to piss off a dev team is to waste their time and make them work on false positives when they've got deadlines to get features out the door. If you're starting out and you don't have a big programming background, it's okay to go, try to do some research. And if you can't figure it out, maybe go take it to the devs and say, hey, I'm not quite understanding this. What is this? They know the code pretty well. I've had a lot of good interactions that way. That's a good way to, as we'll talk about soon, building relationships with the team. It's also a great way to get your own understanding. A lot of devs are really smart and they're taking security seriously. With all the breaches and stuff in the news, they kind of have to. Especially if they're working at a organization that has to handle and process sensitive information. They are very much aware of it, and a lot of them are probably already pretty good security-wise, so don't overlook that. So, which speaks to my next topic, which is training. So, we need to be training our devs on it. I've got a couple successes from doing training. Is there any questions so far? Okay, moving on. And for this next part, we're going to take a trip with Benedict Cumberbatch, because so what happened when we started running Zap and everything is the developers really started to get interesting in the tool, because if they know the security assessment's coming, they know they can get ahead of the game and potentially reduce their timeline by understanding the tool and starting to run it against their code. So I started having one-on-one sessions with them. I showed them how to install it. I had group training sessions about how to use it. And one of the best things happened. We had a phishing thing come in, and they thought it was through the registration process. And what ended up happening was that I went and researched the phishing to see what it was, if it was a campaign, and then I was going to go run through the registration process with Zap. I didn't have to do that because the developer had already gone off and done that. He ran through the registration process, no email, and then he handed me a Zap report. This was my response. I probably uttered some terms of endearment that would have gotten me in trouble with HR. So we can't, as AppSec pros, especially if you're working in an environment like I was, it's imperative that we try to leverage the developers, because ultimately it's about mindset and improving security within the development team, or any department for that matter. This isn't just strictly developers. We should be working with other teams to promote a security mindset, because if you believe the talk about talent shortage, that's not going away anytime soon. I actually recently went and spoke to some 8th graders about career stuff, and I showed them the Harlem Shake stuff that I could do to their school's website. You could hear a pin drop. They did not care about that at all. So I don't know that the future, the future children, the 8th graders and all the people going through school now are going to go into security. They were more interested in Beyonce and, all the flashy celebrity stuff. So we really need to be leveraging the mindset of other people's within the department. And as I said, developers, this is something that they're probably a lot of them are already good at. Or if you show them, like you can show them the vulnerability. Here's how I can do cross-site scripting. They think cross-site scripting is just as cool as us. But now they've got to go fix it and hopefully avoid that in the future. So that's one of the things that I learned very quickly is that I want to get as far left of the process as possible. So I want to get invited to the design meetings. I want to go through, as they're coding, understand kind of what they're building, check stuff there. And then hopefully when you get to the security review, there's nothing really there. They've accounted for everything or addressed everything. Or if you do catch something, it's minor and they can go back and fix it. So that's going to make our lives a lot easier, and that's going to make the development team lives a lot easier. So that was kind of my first journey. One of the things about my journey is that it was a known environment. So I'd been there for about a year and a half already. So I knew the environment overall pretty good. But I was wearing multiple hats. I was, doing AV. I was doing incident response. I was taking care of the WAF.
What's a WAF?
What's a WAF? Web Application Firewall. What's the DPR? What is it? No, data loss prevention. DLP. You get the point. I was doing a lot of stuff, and I was doing the AppSec stuff. So I took my role and responsibility there as I need to do what's practical. I need to do what makes sense. We need to get the heavy hitting stuff and try to address the stuff there. And again, that goes back to improving their mindset and trying to get them to help out with doing the security part of it, because you're not going to be able to do it all. There's just absolutely no way. There's too much code, and there's too many moving parts, and there's probably always going to be a security issue to at least look for. So that leads on to my next journey, which is it's a fresh environment, but it is my sole responsibility. I still have plenty of work to do. I've got stuff I'm getting invited to design meetings. I'm going to stand-ups on a daily basis. I am going to going to weekly meetings. I'm having meetings with managers. I've got all this stuff that I still have to do, and it's across the board. It's not just code that you're looking at. You're dealing with business analysts. You're dealing with design. You're dealing with developers. You're dealing with QA. So you can't focus in on something just like code review and focus there. I mean, you can. And again, this is where if you have programming experience, it doesn't hurt, because you'll be ahead of the game with someone who doesn't, like myself. I am still trying to improve myself as far as coding goes. I'm taking, in my spare time online. I've gotten some training from work. So I have a Pluralsight, and I use that to kind of go through topics that I might be familiar with, use OWASP, all this different stuff. The previous environment was actually waterfall. So getting security in there is a much easier than getting security into an agile environment. Agile is a beast. You've got where waterfall, you have like a release maybe every months, years, I don't know. You'll have weeks, days, maybe a month, I don't know. Agile is meant to really do smaller cycles. So you're kind of breaking up the application and features you're looking to build into smaller chunks. So getting security in there, I can't spend 5 days testing code and reviewing new features. When a new feature is ready to be released, we will go through and test it then. And there, aware of that, I will make it a priority. But hopefully you're doing like a little bit of static analyzing. You have some automation. These are all things to kind of improve upon. So that's not something I'm kicking off right away. What I am doing is trying to understand the environment. Again, this is a fresh environment that I have no idea what's going on in. It's much bigger than my previous environment, so I have to spend some time understanding the environment. For me, it typically takes me about 3 months to get my head kind of wrapped around the overarching environment. At 6 months, I start feeling confident. Between a year and 2 years, I have a really good grasp of the environment. I know where to go. I know who to talk to. I know what I can and can't do. So the first step here is understanding the environment. And that includes building relationships. This is very key here if you're talking about working with another department. So that's the other thing I hadn't mentioned, is that I sit with the development team. I don't sit with the security operations team. I go down once a week and talk to, get with them, kind of non-security stuff. I get, with my security peeps and try to kind of refresh and get rid of some of the brainwashing. But 4 days of the week, I am sitting with the development team, working with them side by side on issues. And so for there's I'm a little frustrated at the security community because they talk about this talent shortage and talk about not being able to work with other departments. We have social engineering as a toolkit, people. It's not hard to give positive reinforcement, kind of build relationships with people, because if you build a relationship with people and they like you, they're going to respond a lot quicker to you. And it's going to be a much easier conversation when you have to have a hard conversation with someone. So I take building relationships. It sounds kind of fluffy and fruity, but it's really important to working with another department when you're talking about security. So what I do is I attend meetings. So like I said, I go to stand-ups, I go to everything, and I keep my mouth shut. I don't say anything. If there's something critical that we need to talk about, then yeah. But I have sat in meetings where the developers are talking about going one way, and it's an insecure way, and I'm just kind of like, I'm curious to see where they go with this. Will they correct their course? And most of the time they do. Sometimes I do have to kind of give them a guidance or push in the right direction. Usually I do that with a question. Again, going back to the understand the environment thing, why are you trying to do this? What problem is this trying to solve? Have you thought about doing it this way? If I have some kind of feedback in that, but attending meetings, shut up, don't go in there and start, throwing security, because no one's going to like you. So the other thing as part of the understanding the environment phase is inventory. So this isn't anything unlike asset management. This isn't anything, pretty much like asset management, network. You got to know what networking hardware you have on the network. You got to know what computers are on their systems. It's the same thing with code, and they have got a lot of them. That was probably the biggest I could do for the picture, so I apologize if you can't read anything there. But they've got code repositories, they've got automation tools, they've got Docker is the hot new thing right now, and they've got 100 of different things that they use within the environment. And so part of your role is to understand and kind of do a security review of this stuff, because if something comes up, like a database being public and getting hit with ransomware, you need to know that that's there. And check for that if they're using something like MongoDB, or as I said, they're moving on to Elasticsearch. So I go through and just start checking through the stuff as I find time. It's really helpful in understanding the environment and what you have in there. So this is where we get to the fun. That's where we get to the assessment process. Assessment processes. So as I mentioned already, evaluate all the new applications. Look for anything going out the door. One of the first things I did was I set up, in this current environment, I set up a third-party vendor assessment process. So we're looking at vendors, we're having them sign the right legal work. We're making sure they don't have any big security holes that really give us some heartburn. And so any new vendors that come through and process our sensitive information have to go through that review. And then, and I set up a process, gave the product owner and the BAs the understanding of the process that they need to go through. In fact, one of the BAs already had a majority of my checklist. I just had to go throw on their links to like VirusTotal or some other domain checking website that they could go use to evaluate. Another thing this does is it allows you, if they're deciding between some software, you can give some input from a security standpoint. Sometimes there's a big security hole. Other times, they both can be secured, so you don't really care. It's just a matter of effort and what you have to do for security. So mobile is one where native versus hybrid, you have different ways of securing those types of environments. So sometimes you shouldn't care. Sometimes you will. It's a matter of will they sign the legal compliance or documents that you need for your organization, and that's an easy no too. So that can help them move along the process of a decision. So, and this goes back to implementing processes that make sense. So we had, typically they've been when people have questions. So I'm sitting with the devs, and as I've gotten there and built some relationships with people, they're more comfortable coming up and asking me questions. I haven't, given them the third-degree burn for not doing some security. In fact, I've as we'll talk about in a minute, I've actually done the opposite there. But look for opportunities to improve processes. So we did the third-party vendor assessment because that came up as a question, and then I stood up how to create tickets within the internal ticket application. Again, tickets, if it's security vulnerabilities, are just like bugs, so they need to be prioritized correctly. If you have a low finding, you don't need to make them just jump all over it, but have a timeline for when that's going to be addressed. That's going to be addressed in the next 2 months, sprint time or whatever. So, you can, and I just happened to work in an environment where they set up a bug defect severity. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, which was critical, high, low, and medium for me. So it was a pretty easy transition, and I just, along with that, kind of hopped on board. And we've had some really good success with getting the dev teams working on it as a priority. We have critical, we do have high, we have medium. So look for processes that make sense to implement. So I'm going to go over training again, because in this environment, I had another opportunity. I decided to try some things because I had built some relationships, and developers like a lot of the same things that we like. They like memes, they like cat videos, they like goofing around. Adam, you should appreciate this. We actually had like a erector set ramp going between our cubicles that we were shooting balls and trying to get into a basket. So they are people just like us, and we can get along with them just fine. They don't have to be the
developers.
Huh?
No, they're not. They're developers.
Well, they are developers, but they have fun just like us. So I connected with Daryl at Dew on Robotech because we both loved Robotech. I was like, oh, I watched as a kid, and we got along that way. And I had a pretty good relationship with Daryl whenever we need to address issues. So look for something to connect on. This is social engineering, people. It's really not that hard. Don't be the dick. As Will Wheaton says, don't be a dick. So one of the things I did for training in my current place is I brought bacon and I brought swag. We'll get to the swag in a minute, but I went to Sam's and bought 2 packages of 72 pieces of bacon, pre-cooked bacon that you could just cook in the microwave. And I spent 15 minutes before training cooking that bacon. And then I threw it on that tray there and I brought it in. And the most glorious thing happened. Every developer walked in and went, is that bacon? And who doesn't love bacon? I mean, come on. So, that was actually a good segue for me to talk about piggybacking. I know that's corny, but it worked because you know what? I have the devs now yelling at me when I try to piggyback on them. Or they will yell at the other devs. They have yelled at the CISO for piggybacking. So, along with the bacon, I also talked about man traps. I was like, you really want to deal with this? And I picked up a YouTube video of a guy trying to get through a man trap with a server, and he was just failing miserably. think of things like that. Have a little fun with the training. They don't have to be slideshows and bullet points. They can be a lot like this, and you're just standing up and talking them as real as it can be. I brought the swag because I wanted to highlight security wins within the development team. I noticed pretty quickly that the security team was doing, or not the security team, the development team was doing a lot of good things in security. And so I decided to highlight that. And, I picked out a few people that I really noticed where they addressed an issue without my involvement, or they may have gotten my involvement and I didn't really have to do much after that. So they brought something to my attention. I said, yeah, that's bad. Let's get that resolved. And they got it resolved. I highlighted that, and shortly after training, I started getting hit up for all sorts of stuff because what I did was I went to my organization. I found the person that had all the swag for our company, and I said, hey, give me some stress balls. And she gave me some stress balls, and I handed those out. And people love stress balls for some reason. They like just swag. I've also, I have the little sliders for the camera where you can like block it out and then push it over, and it's got like a little hole in the tab so that it can see you. I handed those out the other day. I was surprised because I saw one of the devs had just like tape or a sticky note or something over his camera. I was like, hey, I got something else you could try. Gave it to him, and like 2 other devs saw it, and they're like, hey, I want one of those. I was like, all right, here, get a few more in my backpack. I'm out now, so I got to go to the conference and get some more. But I'm not really sure if you want to hand out security conference swag. If you can find something, in a $15 or $20 range, you might fork over some of your own money for that, or see if the organization can either buy you or if they have swag themselves that they would be willing to give away, or, buy them pizza for the security training or something. I don't know. Look for something. But the reason why I have highlight security wins there is because that is one of the most important things, because your next conversation is going to be about the things they did wrong. So this is also social engineering. You want to get on someone's good side, or you want to address an issue with someone or have a hard conversation, you walk up and you say something good. And then you kind of ease your way into addressing the internal issue and lesson learns. We talked about some of the things that we found, discovered that we need to clean up, or something they need to be mindful of. So we, as I mentioned earlier, MongoDB and Elasticsearch, there's no reason why the dev team shouldn't know about that, particularly if they're using one of those two, because they are, their databases, and Elasticsearch is a search tool that searches data. So highlight current trends. Maybe you don't have to do it. I wouldn't overload them either. I wouldn't talk necessarily. I have gotten some feedback from some of the devs on encryption. They really like encryption training as far as code goes. So if you can find something there, that's great. If not, just highlight something that's big in the news. Maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something not. They probably don't really care about Snowden. They might. I don't know. But look for something that you can relate to within your environment. So that's it. You've got an AppSec program started up. Achievement unlocked. You can, the first 3 steps there are understand the environment, set up an assessment, and set up assessments and processes. And why are you texting me? And just got these. Okay. Thanks, Adam.
You're welcome.
So now you've pretty much set up an AppSec program, and from there you can kind of improve upon it. And I plan to do a future talk on kind of my overarching strategy. So my next steps are feedback and review and improvements that I can make. And once you get past like the first understanding, you just kind of loop through 2, 5, and 4. And another thing to mention is that these are all things that you don't understand the environment and then move to assessment and processes. These all kind of meld and they merge together. So while you're working on inventory, you might end up doing some training. I started doing training probably 6-7 months into my gig, so I'm still understanding the environment. But there are some things that I found that I was like, hey, can I get an hour for this with the security, with the development team, QA, product owners, and design, to kind of go over some of these security issues. In fact, I've got training this Friday, my second training this Friday. So I'm doing it like quarterly, If it's a really bad environment, maybe you need to do it monthly. I don't know. You also got to work with the managers to make sure you can find a good time slot, because these guys are very, very busy, and training takes away from that time. But I have a lot of support from the management team to get security in the SDLC, and they have thanked me a lot for being there, because the other thing about security is it's the proper way to do things. So if they're struggling to do code review, or they're struggling to do whatever else process they should be following, security can be a reason for them to lean on and kind of make an impact and kind of tighten up what's happening within the development team. So, and then finally, improve your skills. So that is, if you can get training, SANS 542, which is a web application penetration course for SANS, really kind of opened my eyes. It's a 5-day course, and it really helped me kind of start getting the attack methods under control. What they don't cover is how to fix code. But if you can get one side of it, that's great. Tim Tomes does some developer training where he shows the developers how to break an application, and then he goes and, like, the last 2 days are to show how to fix the application. There are, Troy Hunt is a big name within application security. You got Bill Sempf, James Jardine. All these guys are really good at what they do, and they produce content. So Troy Hunt's on YouTube. He also does Pluralsight courses. He's a tweeter, and he's an active blogger. He does Have I Been Pwned? So he's got a lot of breach stuff going on there. You've also got James Jardine, who has the Dev Security Podcast, I think DevSec Podcast, which is actually focused to developers, but you can certainly pull stuff from them. Bill Sempf is kind of in the mobile industry. I've had him on my podcast to talk about how to do attack Android phones. Next year, he's going to attack iPhones. Plan to have him back on again, but he's a guy to keep in mind, and really anybody in OWASP is worth following and keeping tabs on. There's also a book that you can get, which is the Web Application Hackers Handbook by Stuart Pinto. He is the creator of, David Studart is the creator of Burp. So and this book is considered the Bible for application security, and it's like 800 to 1,000 pages. I don't remember exactly, but it's a good resource to reference back to when you're looking at cross-site scripting or trying to get an understanding of SQL injection. And it's a good book for downloading Burp Suite and starting to get familiar with that tool.
What was the name of it?
The Web Application Hackers Handbook.
Yeah, I'll pick back on that. That's a real good resource.
I guess I should put some. I had a wedding to go to this weekend, so my slides are simple. I plan to improve them, and I will certainly share the active version so you can reference back to it. But at the end, you can also email me if you have any questions. So as I told Tim Tomes what I do. So my job role, and as my boss and the development team has described to me, is I'm a liaison. When I told Tim Tomes this is how he responded. He made fun of me for, I am a people person. I have people skills. And he is absolutely correct. I go between the development team and security team. I take security concerns to the development team, but I also bring development concerns to the security team. Hey, why can't we do this? We need to get this going. We need to have this. Because if you don't, you're going to have shadow IT. If you're sitting with the dev team, then that's not going to be as much, but they still might do stuff. They're probably doing stuff that I don't know about or I haven't found out about yet. But that's where having a good relationship with them, where they feel comfortable around me. They can come ask me questions, and I won't, yell at them or do anything. They can rely on me that I'm going to fight for them, or I'm going to give them a viable alternative solution to what they're doing. So it is again, my final note here is to think about the mindset, think about how you can build a strong relationship with the development team, and things will go a lot smoother for you, especially if you don't know programming skills. I don't know how many people in the dev team don't know I have programming skills, but I'm reading code, I'm starting to get better about it, but I'm not in there actively coding because I have a much larger role, and I have to interact with the design team. I have to interact with the BAs, and the developers, and then the managers on top of that. I have set up, one-on-ones with each manager to understand what their needs are. And from that, I've, been able to address things and improve security in the SDLC. We're not getting security into the SDLC because I promise you there's probably already some security stuff there. You're looking to improve upon it. I don't even like throwing security in anywhere within the SDLC. I don't like, I call highlighting security wins DevSec wins, but I really don't like that. I just like dev wins. So we're just kind of there to put them in a position to succeed. So there are my plugs. I have the Exploring Information Security podcast at Timothy D. Block on Twitter. You can find my website at timothydblock.com. And then reach out to me on timothy.dblock@gmail.com. Also, if anyone knows Splunk or know anyone that is a Splunk admin looking for a senior role, reach out to me. I might have a position for them. They would have to move to Nashville, but we do have an open position for people. So what are your questions?
As someone in a role who has many hats to wear, one of which is web app testing, where would you prioritize your time?
So that's definitely going to be it depends on your the waterfall or agile. You really want to test all new applications going out the door, and I guess training too would be a really good opportunity to kind of help them understand security a little bit better. There are, you kind of have to. It's hard to give an answer to that. I know that's the cheap way out of answering it, but it's kind of depending on what your priorities are within the organization. So do they, and where the problems are. Is QA, holding up development? Maybe go there and try to find some solution to help them, show them ZAP. Kind of look for things, low-hanging fruit especially. If you can, like I said, do all new applications and look for some of the heavier stuff that can really lead to having some troubles. So looking for the high-end criticals. I would definitely start there. And then as you get into a groove with that and do some training with that, you can kind of start moving down the medium and lows. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, from what I'm kind of taking from what you're saying is to focus on the new stuff that's kind of coming out. I am in an agile environment. As,
So,
you can't take 5 days to code because
right. So the focus there might be good to automate stuff. So there's this thing called the continuous integration, or OWASP has a project called OWASP Pipeline. And they have some YouTube videos out on how to do that within the environment. If they've already got something like Jenkins or some other automating tool stood up, go in there and see where you can make an impact. If you can just keep things up to date, that's a pretty good win right there. But I would, and if you're doing just features with an agile development lifecycle, your testing is going to be a lot quicker too, because if you're just focusing on one part of the application, not the entire thing.
Gotcha.
So, speaking of time, how much time do you need to invest in first getting your tools set up, and then you're talking about getting buy-in from your devs? What sort of level of effort should you have them expect? What do you tell them when your development manager walks up and goes, "How much time are you talking about taking away from my people to have them work on security crap?"
Yeah, that's probably a metrics thing, where you need to kind of show and that's also where management has to have support there. If you don't have management and leadership support from the top down, I mean or from the manager up, you're gonna have a hard time getting that summon. If the manager right there is coming and talking to you about that, it sounds like he doesn't have buy-in. So you really kind of have to work to show him the benefits. So one of the things I did towards the end of my tenure at DO was I wanted to start setting up code review. We were running pretty good on application security, on assessment checks. I was starting to go to some of the design meetings. I went to code review, and manager was like, "I've been wanting to do that." So you got to kind of find what their priorities are, and see how you can kind of exploit that to kind of help them out. So again, the key point here is putting the development team in a position to succeed from a secure standpoint. So Did that answer your question, Adam?
Well, yeah, I'll accept the tools. How long does it take to get Zap and all that running?
Well, app is easy. It doesn't take long to get started with Zap. There's YouTube videos on how to use Zap, so you should be able to get up and running with that pretty quickly. And keep in mind that if this is a new tool, it is going to take time, especially if this isn't your focus. If you can get training, if you can get like 5 days of training to go do it, that's fine. I have how to build a home lab type of content, so you can spend some time in the evening learning how to hack it, and you can spin up vulnerable applications and just go to town on them and really kind of understand the tool. Within a work environment, you just gotta make time, or do the best that you can, and then just try to improve from there. Like I said, Zap has really good documentation too, and that's what I started with was just reading through the documentation and going, oh, that's a cool feature. But like I said, it really didn't click for me until I had the SANS 542 course, and that really kind of gave me some work play time with Zap and Burp Suite and some of the other tools. So, like I said, if you can get a static analyzer in place, and they've got open source static analyzers, you might see about automating some of the checks in there to look for issues. But you have to tune it. I mean, that's the thing is open source. You're gonna have to look for the false positives, kind of try to tune them out if you can.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions or heckling you want to sling Tim's way? Rabble. Clearly, nobody's got anything to throw at you, so you've done well. Thank you very much for presenting it.
I'm gonna go crawl in bed.
Yeah, I feel better. Thank you for that.
Hey, so if anyone wants to give me feedback, so this is my first presentation of this talk. I'm going to be at B-Sides Huntsville giving this. I've submitted to three other conferences over the next several months. So if anyone could give me feedback, what they liked, what they didn't like, if I didn't explain something well enough, if I need to go deeper into something, hit me up on my Gmail account and let me know. Or give Adam to me, and then Adam can just troll me. I don't know, whenever you want to.
I like this plan. Cool.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of
Bye, Tim.
Bye, sexy.
Bye. Thank you. We enjoy it. Bye-bye.
Y'all take care.
All right. You too. Have a good night.